Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to be talking about Microsoft Forms and Power Automate. So, bit of a doozy today. And we have our friend Nick with NetLogic. He is actually going to do the demo. And we're here. Any questions that you have along the way, feel free to unmute yourself and chime in. So, I am going to stop sharing my screen so Nick can share his, and we'll flip it over to him.
Alrighty, hello everybody. I'm Nick Tessitore. I'm from NetLogic Computer Consultant, and today we're going to teach you guys Flow and Power Automate. I'm just going to find the window. Here we go. Let me close out of this tab. Alrighty, so today I've created a very simple flow so I can show you guys both Forms and Power Automate simply. Now, it is important to note Forms already does have the accessibility to do what we've done today. However, the Power Automate script that we've created is a little bit intricate, so it is going to show you some more of the more detailed work that you can create. So right now, we have our form up in preview mode. In preview mode, you can see it in both a computer view and a mobile view. Excuse me 1 second. Sorry about that. So we've created a simple webinar form and we did add a nice image. We have some required fields for our users to fill out. They can't continue the form or submit it without filling out the required fields. Now we can leave them as unrequired, however, that will keep them as optional for the user. Once these get filled out, which we will test fill out, we'll call ourselves Joe Smo. We'll say we're Joe at netlogic.com today. How do we hear about today's webinar? We'll mark it as tomorrow's technology today. And what are we most interested in learning about? Well, let's say Power Automate. Once we submit this, we're going to get a thanks. Your response has been submitted. If we hit back here, this is going to take us out of the preview mode and we'll be able to see our edit mode. Inside of our questions edit mode, we're also going to have our responses, which are naturally held within forms. So if you did want to just house responses in here, we have that option. We can also open this in an Excel spreadsheet straight from the form response page. We can also view our results, which will show each individual form in the form view. Now, going back to the questions, in our edit mode, all we have to do is click into our little web part and we'll be able to edit these. Now, as we can see, we have an add new feature. This will add in between number 1 and 2. So if we scroll down to the bottom and hit this option, we'll be able to continue our form from here. And we have a few different options. We have multiple choice, we have text, we can add a rating, which we can use for the form. We can have a date option. So these forms can be used in a multitude of ways, and the date can be a way to mark your calendars. We then have a drop down with a few other options, and then we can create a section. Now what a section is going to do is it's going to split your form up, and this is a good way to create different required fields. That way all of the form isn't required to be filled out in order to submit it. So up in the top, we have our preview. We have our theme, which is going to be all of your pretty images that'll be in the background here. So if we click theme, we do have theme ideas, and I believe we can upload our own as we get to the bottom down here. However, we are using one that is already here for us. Next, we have the share feature. Now, the share feature is going to be the most important part of the form because this is how it's going to end up being distributed. So when we hit the share feature, right now we have anyone with the link can respond. And if we wanted to put this on a SharePoint site, or if we wanted to distribute it in a mass email or put it into a meeting, we would want this option. However, if let's say you're using a form for time out of work or COVID-19 testing for your employees, what we can do is only people in my organization can respond. And this is going to lock it down to whatever your domain is when you're creating the form. Next, we have a few other different share options, such as the QR code. We do have an embedded link, so if we want to put this on other websites that may not be SharePoint, if you guys have your own website. And then we can also just start the email straight from here. We can also share this as a template in the event that we want to share this exact form with somebody else who wants to create a form similar. And we can share to collaborate. And what this is going to do is it's going to let other people to work on your form. Now that is Forms in its entirety. It is very, very simple and easy to work with. All it comes down to is what questions you want to put on the page. Now up top, we do have our little section with the title and the description. Ideally, we love to use this to give the person filling out the form as much information as we want, or if we need any specific information, we can add those details here. And then this image, all we did is we clicked onto the image. This will give you the option right at the beginning of the form. We'll get rid of it for now so we can see what that looks like. We'll get an image icon right here. And then we have a choice to Bing search, OneDrive search, or upload it straight from our device. In this case, all I typed in was meeting, and I found a nice picture. And then we clicked on the picture and we hit the add button at the top. Now it looks a lot bigger than it actually is, but once it loads in, it'll get nice and small, and then we'll be good to go. Any questions or concerns about forms that you guys might have before we move on? Go look at the chat really quick in case anything gets typed in.
I have a question.
Absolutely.
Can somebody edit, when you're working together, can somebody edit from a Mac even though they're not using Forms?
Yep, absolutely. So this is the online version of Forms. So anybody who can sign into office.com will be able to edit this with the link provided.
Thanks.
Not a problem. Alrighty. Well, next, let's take a look at Power Automate, and we'll see what Power Automate's doing in the background when these forms are submitted. So up here, we'll open our Power Automate tab, and it looks a little daunting at first. However, it is a very, very simple thing to create. So as we scroll through this, we're going to see we have a lot of different options here, and we're starting off with our form. So all I did is we went to the create option. Yep, so we can leave this page. And from the create option, I search for my templates. So what am I using? Here I'm using forms, and in the next case, I'm going to be using Excel. However, if I search for forms, it's going to give me a more in-depth search. Now, straight from here, all I did is send form response, or not send form responses for approval, track Microsoft form responses in an Excel online business spreadsheet. Now, when it comes to Power Automate, it is very, very particular with what you're using. So you want to make sure you're grabbing the right flow, because we can also make it put forms into Excel, the actual app. Now, once we clicked into this, it created that entire flow for me, and all I had to do on my end was fill in the blanks. So let's go back to my flows over here on the left-hand side. Here we go. We see our flow right here. If we wanted to go into edit mode, we do have that option. If we click into the flow, it's just going to show us what it looks like. We won't be able to edit. Right here, we do have the share option. So if you wanted to distribute this to other individuals, whether it was to edit or to see the flow, you do have that option. And then right here, of course, we have more commands because it's Microsoft. We can continue to the saves. We can see the run history and the analytics of what this is actually doing. Right now, we're not going to have a lot of detailed analytics, but we will have some based on our responses. If we wanted to export this and give this to another tenant, we do have that option. So we can share our flows in between Microsoft tenants. Repair tips off, we don't suggest this. The reason being is Power Automate has a tool called Flow Checker, which I'll show you guys. And whenever your flow isn't working, it's going to show you exactly why it's not working and where you can change something to fix it. Next, we can delete our flow, but we don't want to do that, so we're not going to. Right now, we're going to click edit and we'll go view it. Up in the top right, these are our two primary tools, which is save, flow, and flow checker, and test. So 3 tools, my apologies. We want to save as often as we can with flow, because this is going to allow us to kind of backtrack whenever something's wrong with the flow. We do have our flow checker up here, and when we click it, we'll get errors and warnings. Warnings are generally going to be if there is the capability for failure, it will try and predict it. Errors are anything that is actually failing and needs to be fixed right away for the flow to operate. And then right up in the top right, we have test. Now what test is going to do is it's going to force all of the necessary steps for the flow to activate. It's going to force those to happen and see if the flow can actually run. Now it doesn't seem to have taken us back to our actual flow. So let's backspace here. There we go. So right up top, you're going to notice it's asking me to pick a form. So what we do is we would go and find our form. In this case, it's going to load and we're going to find the webinar sign up. Once we've entered that, it did already apply the apply to each tab for us and has list of responses. If we click into this, we're going to get a little side option. Actually, I might not because it's already determined, but we can show you down below. So again, we're going to have to put the form ID in. So we're going to do the webinar sign up. What this top portion is doing is detecting that the form has been submitted. The apply to each is then going to start gathering all of the details from the form, and this is where we're going to start putting it into Excel. So we're going to go find our Excel spreadsheet. In this case, I put it in my OneDrive. The document library is also considered OneDrive. And then I'm going to find my file. Now, anytime you're starting to put together a Power Automate flow or you're looking for a file, you'll get this nice little pop-up window on the right-hand side. We're going to scroll down and we're going to find the webinar sign up tracker. And then we had to create a table in our Excel spreadsheet. So this is currently what the Excel spreadsheet looks like. If we refresh, it'll fill in all the tiny details for us. I did include the first name, last name, contact, email on my own. However, everything else is populated from the flow. Now the flow didn't seem to save, and that's why we didn't get it when we clicked in. However, we do have the form ID and we have the response ID. We found the location, and now we're going to find the table. It is necessary to create the table with as many columns as you're going to need so it can populate, because the form from flow is only going to populate rows. So we're going to select our table. Once it's detected that table, it notices what my columns are named. If I hadn't named these columns, it would be column 1 through 5. I'm going to click into here, and we're going to notice we get all our dynamic content over here on the right-hand side. So for me, it's as easy as just matching them up. We have our first name column. Next, we'll click into the last name one. We'll include that. Then we want our contact email. We want our referral. How did you hear about the webinar? And then learning about what are you most interested in. Once we have that content in there, in this case, we don't need item submission time and responder email because we don't have that set up. So Flow is going to notify us and say, hey, this is no longer present. You need to get rid of it. And the reason it's going to get rid of it is because Flow wants to operate as fast as possible. And if it's just like a line of code where it has to read every single line before it can operate and do a task. So if that was there, it might cause an error. Next, we have our conditions, which we're not going to worry about because that's set up on its own. And then over here on the left-hand side, we can set up notifications. In this case, the notification is going to say flow run failed. And if flow fails to do its task, it's going to shoot me an email. Now, of course, I can configure this in a multitude of ways. The most common way we do it here at NetLogic is we'll set it up so the flow gives us a response based on the flow that it's doing. So in some cases, if the forms are being response for our Robin Robbins meetings, we'll get an email every time somebody is accepted. In the case that it says no, it'll archive it and then send it somewhere else. Now all I have to do is I hit save in the top left, and it's going to save this all for me. Now once it's saved, if we want to create a test, let's do that. I'll perform the trigger action and we'll do save and test. Then, of course, we have to go and we have to do the trigger action. So, again, we're going to go to the preview mode. And we'll just type Joe Smith at netlogic.com. We'll say we heard about it from here, and we want to do Power Automate. Now, once we submit it, this isn't going to actually populate into our Excel spreadsheet. And the reason is Power Automate is going to recognize that we want it to be triggered in a test. And it's going to tell me right at the top with a green bar, your flow ran successfully. However, if it fails, it'll show you that with an orange bar. Now, flow can get extremely intricate or it can stay very, very simple. However, it all determines on what you're building. Sometimes we have Power Automate scripts that'll run in behind Power Apps. Other times we have automate scripts that do simple tasks like telling you what you need to do based on your planner that day. So the opportunities are endless, and all in all, that's Power Automate in its whole. Does anybody have any questions or concerns about Power Automate that they want me to touch upon? All right. Katie, is there anything?
Sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
How did you get from the form to Power Automate?
Absolutely. So let me show you. We'll navigate to office.com. And the way I prefer to do it is we'll travel over the waffle over here in the top left called App Launcher. And we'll find both of our tools. So for forms, we're going to find the three dots, the contacts menu, and we open it in a new tab. And then I head back to Office Home and I do the same thing for Power Automate. Then from Power Automate, when I actually want to start creating, we can search straight from the main menu. What I prefer to do is I hit the Create tab, and then I'll find whatever I want to work with from here. Alrighty, Katie, is there anything else you want me to touch upon in these environments for them?
Does anyone have any questions about what kind of business processes you can automate, or any kind of reminders or scheduling or anything like that that you want Nick to talk about?
Yeah, I have a question. So since Forms already makes an Excel document of the responses of whatever the customer's filling out in Forms, why do we need the Power Automate?
So in this case, it was more just for the demo, and all I was trying to do was show how we would actually build with Power Automate. Of course, with Forms, we don't necessarily need that tool. What we'll end up seeing a lot of the time with Power Automate is instead of archiving those answers in an Excel spreadsheet, we'd use Power Automate to then have the form responses notifying us through email or creating tasks in our planner. Pretty much whatever we can imagine in the Microsoft environment, we can have forms sent to that tool.
Does that make sense, Jen? So basically Power Automate just serves as like the connection between, if you want to use Forms, or you can use really any Microsoft application, you can plug all kinds of things in and move things around.
So when they fill out a form, then I could have set up in the Power Automate that it's going to send them a generic email with a link to something they're signing up for, while letting me know that someone signed up. So that's what you're saying. All that is automatically done through Power Automate.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Could you give examples of other business process flows that might be like something that would be used frequently on a daily basis where we could use Power Automate?
Absolutely. So I'm going to hop into my email really quick. So let me stop the screen share because I want to pull up a specific email. Unfortunately, David Swenson creates all our actual Power Automate, so I don't necessarily have access to the back end to show you all the pretty work he does. However, I can show you what they're actually doing. So every day at 4:30 and every day at 8:02 a.m., I get two types of emails. So the first email I'm going to show you guys is from Cortana. Now, what David did is he integrated Cortana with Power Automate, and every day at the beginning of 8:02, Cortana is going to shoot me an email, and it's going to show me who I need to follow. Ooh, excuse me, who I need to follow up with. If I have any task lasting in Planner, in this case, I don't exactly have a lot, but Cortana is going to reach out to me and show me what I need to do for that day. Now, in the same bucket, every day at 4:30, as you notice in the right here, I can't hover over it, it'll disappear, but the blue highlighted email has a red reminder on it. Now, we named it Office Assistant in this case because we did create a bot with Power Automate. However, what Power Automate's doing in the back end is it's sending me an email every day scheduled at 4:30, and this includes the rest of our team, and it's saying, hey, make sure you close your tickets for the day. These are the apps you can use or the links that you can use to go close those and figure out what you need to do. We can also respond back to the Office Assistant and get responses based on the flow, which are provided down here, right here. And of course, we can add suggestions, but that's just Outlook being Outlook, and we can reply and forward to this as we will. But but these are the more common ones that we use within NetLogic. A lot of our Power Automate scripts are kind of more niche sections. So for example, when I brought up the COVID-19 one, what we did is we attached a form to the front of somebody's landing page, and then we had Power Automate notifying the head of the company every time one of those were submitted. And then that can archive into his email. Power Automate's a very strong tool, and it does include some outside sources. So for example, Cognito Forms is one of the ones we'll use a lot more frequently. Most of the stuff is within the office environment, but it kind of comes down to whatever tasks you want to start cutting down on. At one point, I did have it notifying me every day. What it would do is Power Automate would check my planner, and then based on my planner, it would create a table within Outlook, and then it would then give me my tasks in order of urgency, date created, and date due. Now, of course, that was all set up in Power Automate itself, but then it would just give me a pretty email every day. Hopefully that answers your question a little bit better.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions I can answer for you guys? Awesome, awesome. Katie, is there anything I missed or that you want me to go back on?
I don't think so. I think great job. And of course, we encourage everyone to get in there and check out Power Automate, kind of play around with it. Let me know what questions you have. Feel free to give us a call at the office, and we're happy to talk through anything with you. Our next webinar is going to be on October 21st at 1 o'clock, and we're going to be talking about Microsoft Teams. So thank you so much for joining us today, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. See ya.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.